Hi again and welcome back to this series of videos, A Beginner's Guide to Music Direction in Musical Theatre. Committed to helping new music directors by sharing information and tips to become more effective in your role and hopefully helping you get the very best from your performers. Now, whether your performance is in a traditional theatre, a concert venue, a school or village hall, the question will always arise as to how and where you should position your band. Further to this, sometimes it's required either through limitations of space or artistic requirements to position the band or orchestra somewhere other than the traditional orchestral pit position. Whichever location is chosen, all will have its own problems, advantages and disadvantages. So, in this two-part video, we're going to be looking at various band setup options and the issues that each of them will pose. Please do subscribe if you haven't already by hitting the button below so you can be informed when further videos are released, and let me know if there's something specific that you want me to cover. And if you know anyone, dare I say it, perhaps the current music director you're working with, that you think would benefit from a few hints on the subjects I cover in these videos, feel free to share the link to the channel. Okay then, let's make a start. When the band or orchestra meets for the first time, it's either in a rehearsal room or maybe in the performance venue itself. Many MDs would say that it's preferable if this first playthrough is in a rehearsal room away from a performance venue, mainly due to the fact that it's away from any distractions associated with having technical crews around, sound, lighting issues, where all you need to do is concentrate on the music and not to have these distractions. Of course, if you're in a rehearsal room, it will mean that the band's equipment will need to be set up again in the venue. But using a separate rehearsal room means you should have a much better opportunity to concentrate on the music and away from any distractions. Either way, there are some key things that you need to have checked before the first note is played by your band or orchestra. Get to the rehearsal early and ensure everything is there that is needed. Check that you have access to the pre-arranged music stands with lights if you're meeting in the venue, or your players to bring their own stands if in a rehearsal room. Check that there is sufficient power sockets available for any electronic instruments, and if in the venue you need to check with the technical staff as to which sockets should be used for these instruments. There is sometimes a different circuit for electronic instruments in such venues. Thirdly, check there is sufficient chairs for all your players. When you're in the performance venue, ensure all your players have enough room and have clear sight lines. I've mentioned previously that you need to have given some thought into the position of your players before they come together. And even if you're in a separate rehearsal room at this point, it's a good opportunity to put that plan into action. Of course, your plan will be completely dependent on the location of the band or orchestra. Over this and the next video, we're going to look at the 3 different positions and the problems that each of them pose. By far, the least problematic would be for your band to be located in the traditional orchestra pit location. Now, of course, not all venues have such a facility, and sometimes the band may have to be in front of the stage, but at the same level of the audience and not in any form of pit. If that's the case, there are going to be certain sound balance issues. If this is the case, and sometimes for artistic reasons, the band may be located as part of the production on stage or somewhere within the performance area itself. This could be at stage level or even raised. I've worked on platforms over 3 meters high at the back of the stage before. The third location we are going to look at is when we refer to a band as a remote band. This could be offstage, maybe in a scenery dock space or even in a different room altogether. Another variable to consider is the type of production itself. Does it call for many players? Does it need a full string section? Is it a 4-piece band or a 24-piece orchestra? Is it a traditional musical or a more modern rock pop type musical? The answers to these questions only you will know and will inevitably lead to determining where the band or orchestra is located. And the third variable would be how you would position the players. Well, this of course would also be determined by the type of production. So, given all these variables, let's start to take a look firstly on player positions in an orchestral pit type location. There are no hard and fast rules regarding how players should be positioned, but having said that, a lot of these decisions will be dependent on how much room you actually have. However, there are some conventions and some preferred layouts you would need to consider. Let's take the example of a modern type production with a rhythm section, some strings, woodwind and brass. You as the MD is ideally placed on a raised podium in full view of the stage and your players. The rhythm section in a modern type of musical is likely to be the driving force of the band and as such should be centred. The drums, percussion centred in front of you and the bass on your left. Yes, of course it can be on your right, but either way the bass player should be near the drummer at all times with these types of productions, as they like to lock into the groove, as they say. The guitar or guitars would be nearby and any keyboards make up the remainder of the rhythm section. Keys 1 particularly, I always feel, should be close to the MD. When or if things go wrong, it's usually the keys players that come to the rescue. String players to the left, similar to a position in a classical orchestra, and woodwind and brass, sometimes the loudest section, to the right. But of course not all musicals are written for guitars and keyboards. More traditional musicals like Gilbert and Sullivan operetta and Rodgers and Hammerstein's productions call for a much more traditional setup. And as such, the arrangement of players needs to incorporate this. Again, given our pit location setup, a more traditional orchestration layout would look like this. Again, the MD centred with strings to the left and woodwind in front, similar to a classical layout of players, brass to the right and percussion on the extreme right. Both these positional setups could be varied to ensure the best use of space you have, but try to keep the rhythm, strings, woodwind and brass sections together, as of course they frequently play together. In a previous video, when I discussed production meetings, I said that the position of the band, or should I say location of the band or orchestra, needs to be discussed in advance to ensure that any technical issues are resolved and there is actually enough room for the musicians you require. Always, always, always check to make sure you have enough room. Having enough room and all musicians being able to have clear sight lines is vital. Don't leave it until you get to the venue. By then, it's too late. In the next video, we will look at moving the band or orchestra out of the pit altogether into 2 other locations we mentioned previously, and the technical issues that need to be overcome to enable this to happen. We'll also look at some of the equipment we need and how it assists us in our alternative locations. See you next time.